I want you to picture a scene. It's visceral, but if we're being honest, it's something we've all either seen or, felt bubbling up inside us. A man is standing in his kitchen. It's late. He's bathed in that harsh, cold light of a smartphone screen. He reads a message, maybe a rejection, bad news, or just one notification too many, and he just snaps. He hurls the phone against the wall. Glass shatters. Silence returns.
The violent image.
It is. And the standard reaction, the civilized reaction, is to look at that and say, wow, that guy lost it. That's a tantrum, a total failure of self-control. But looking at the psychological reality of that moment, I get the sense we're judging him too quickly.
I'm judging him backwards.
Backwards.
Completely.
Yeah.
See, from the outside, it looks like a loss of control. But if you look at the mechanics of the psyche, what's actually happening under the hood, that act of destruction is a desperate attempt to reclaim control.
That sounds completely counterintuitive. He's destroying his own property. How is that reclaiming anything?
Because in that moment, the phone isn't just a phone. It's the external world dictating his reality. It's the messenger of his powerlessness. By shattering it, he breaks the illusion that he's passive. He touches the unmediated pulse of his own being. It's a ritual. He's trying to feel real again.
So destruction as a way to prove you exist.
Precisely. It's an assertion of agency in a world that demands passivity.
Okay, well, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're walking into a bit of a philosophical minefield. We're exploring the tension between civilization, with a capital C, and our own darkest instincts. We're looking at the uncomfortable possibility that the urge to destroy isn't a glitch in our software, it's a feature.
I would go further, it's the engine.
The engine. You're framing destruction as a hidden superpower, which I have to admit I'm skeptical about. Calling a temper tantrum a superpower feels like a stretch. But let's set the stage. If the guy in the kitchen isn't just angry, what's he actually acting out?
He's acting out the fundamental conflict of the human condition. We like to tell ourselves a story that civilization is the triumph of reason. We think we built cities and laws because we got smart and nice, but that's a fairy tale. Civilization is a ceasefire.
A ceasefire implies a war.
It is a war, a fragile compromise between two forces that live inside every single one of us.
Eros and Thanatos.
Right. But we need to be careful with those terms because pop culture has really watered them down.
Usually people think Eros is just sex and Thanatos is just death.
And that's way too simple. Eros is the drive to create, to bind things together. It's the energy that builds families and cities and systems. It's the glue. But the Thanatos is the drive to undo. It's not just death. It's the desire to return to a state of zero tension, to separate, to destroy.
And the argument here is that civilization is built almost entirely on the suppression of that second drive.
Yes. And this is where the economics of the psyche come in. To build an economy, to have a society, you can't have people acting on their immediate impulses. We want to take, we want to strike, we want to consume, but we don't. We renounce those instincts. Civilization is built upon a renunciation of instinct.
Which makes sense. I mean, you can't have a functioning supply chain if everyone is running around smashing phones or punching their boss.
True. But here's the catch, and this is where it gets dark. That energy doesn't just disappear. Physics applies to the mind too. Energy is conserved. If you don't let it out, it turns inward.
So it transforms.
It calcifies. The cost of that transformation is what we call morality.
Wait, hold on. You're saying morality is just repurposed aggression? That feels incredibly cynical. I always thought morality was what elevated us above the animals.
That's the lovely story we tell ourselves to sleep at night. But if you look at the mechanics, morality is a cage forged from necessity. It's a system of repression. When you suppress that drive to destroy, it leaves scars. It creates guilt, anxiety, neurosis.
So we're all just walking around with this bottled up energy, pretending to be nice, while internally we are boilers waiting to explode.
Sometimes we do explode. That's the leakage we see throughout history.
Give me an example of this leakage on a scale that actually matters.
Look at the Protestant Reformation.
Martin Luther, the 95 Theses. But that was a theological dispute, wasn't it? A debate about indulgences and church corruption.
On the surface, yes. But look closer at the behavior. It wasn't just a debate in a lecture hall. It was an eruption. It was a mass release of suppressed desire for autonomy. And how did it manifest? Mobs tearing down statues, smashing stained glass, whitewashing frescoes.
The iconoclasm, I always viewed that as just religious zealotry, people getting carried away.
But ask yourself, why smash the statue? Why is that necessary for a new theology? Because destruction is generative. To build the new world, the new Protestant world, they felt they had to physically dismantle the old one. The energy required to dismantle is the same energy that seeks to dominate. Luther invited people to smash idols, and in doing so, they felt a violent rebirth.
So destruction creates space. You can't put new furniture in a room that's already full of junk.
Exactly. But this brings us to the part that is going to make you uncomfortable. We aren't just talking about history books. We're talking about you.
I had a feeling this was coming. It's easy to analyze Martin Luther. It's harder to analyze why I get a headache after a long staff meeting.
But it's the same mechanism. You're part of this system. Every time you swallow your anger in a meeting, every time you choose politeness over honesty, every time you don't say the thing you know needs to be said, you're enacting that civilizational contract. You're trading instinct for order.
But isn't that just being an adult? If I screamed every time I was frustrated, I'd be unemployed and lonely.
You would be. But the question is, what is the cost? We are symptoms of a culture that demands constant self-erasure. And when the gap between who we are, these little creatures full of aggressiveness, as Freud called us, and who we're supposed to be gets too wide, something has to give.
This connects to the idea of the internal police, because it's one thing to have a cop on the street corner telling you not to speed. It's another thing to have a cop inside your own head.
The superego.
Can we break that down? Because I think people hear superego and they just think conscience, like Jiminy Cricket. But in this context, it sounds like something much, much nastier.
It is much nastier. The superego is the internalized authority. Your parents, society, teachers, all woven into your psyche. But unlike a real police officer, the superego doesn't just punish you for what you do. It punishes you for what you wish.
That's the part that blows my mind. So I can be sitting there, perfectly well behaved, not hurting a fly, but because I thought about hurting someone or I thought about something selfish, the superego punishes me.
Yes, it creates guilt over forbidden desires. The child who momentarily hates a sibling, the employee who secretly wants the boss to fail. You never act on it, but the superego knows the wish was there.
Talk about a thought crime. It's like living in a surveillance state with the cameras in your own brain.
And it creates a neurosis of obedience. We turn that aggression inward. Since we can't attack the person causing our frustration, we attack ourselves. We feel guilty, anxious, unworthy.
So civilization breeds a specific kind of suffering born of obedience? That's a heavy concept. Is there any way out? Or are we just stuck beating ourselves up forever?
Well, there is a hope. Freud called it sublimation.
The alchemy of the soul.
In a way, sublimation is the process of taking that raw, dangerous drive, the Thanatos, and channeling it into something culturally valued. Instead of repressing it, you redirect it.
Like art.
Art, science, philosophy. Look at Michelangelo. Think of the image of him wrestling figures out of marble. He wasn't just carving, he was fighting the stone. He was sublimating his inner torment, his aggression, into beauty. He destroyed the rough block to reveal the David. Nietzsche is a perfect example because he was incredibly aggressive in his writing. He wanted to destroy the morality of his time. But he didn't burn down churches. He burned down concepts. He wrote philosophy that hammered away at the foundations of the West. That's destruction, yes, but it's creative destruction.
Okay, I buy that. But here's the problem I have with sublimation as the solution. Not everyone is Michelangelo. Not everyone is Nietzsche. Most of us are just trying to get through the work week. What happens to the rest of us who can't channel our aggression into a masterpiece?
That is the dark side of sublimation. When it can't be expressed individually through art or work, it tends to become collective.
Collective aggression.
Yes, if I cannot own my own aggression, I project it. I find a scapegoat, a group, the other.
So the logic is, I'm not violent, they're the threat.
Precisely. And by uniting against a scapegoat, the group feels a tremendous relief. The guilt lifts. The superego, that internal police officer, suddenly says, good job, you're righteous. Violence becomes moral.
That explains so much about, well, everything. Politics, social media mobs. It feels good to pile on.
It feels ecstatic. It explains the mechanism of belonging. To be included, you must agree on who deserves to be excluded.
That's the trade-off. To be safe in the herd, you have to help the herd trample someone else.
And this policing extends to our most intimate lives as well. Look at sexuality.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Because we assume we're in a liberated age, we have dating apps, we have everything on display, we're supposedly freer than ever.
But look at how it's on display. It's performance. Sexuality is funneled into very narrow channels. Historically, it was monogamy and reproduction. That was the old school repression. But today, we're policed by algorithms and aesthetics.
We're free to post, but only if it fits the brand.
We're free to be visible, but not vulnerable. We're free to consume bodies like products, but not to truly connect with the messy, chaotic reality of desire. We sacrifice inner freedom to belong to the digital tribe. We've sterilized Eros.
It seems like we're circling back to this idea that Eros and Thanatos, creation and destruction, aren't actually opposites. They seem to need each other.
They're partners. That's the crucial insight. You cannot have culture without the dance between them. Eros builds the cathedral. Thanatos asks, what if we burned it down to start over?
And you actually need both voices in the room.
You do. Think about punk rock.
I love the punk rock example.
It's the perfect modern example. Think about the context. The 1970s. Rock music had become bloated, polished, overproduced. It was civilized. It was safe.
The Eagles.
Exactly. And then comes punk. It was ugly. It was aggressive. It was noise. It was destruction. But it cleared the forest. It allowed something new to grow. Every major cultural shift requires that destructive energy.
But there's a danger there, right? If you just burn it down without the Eros part.
Then you get nihilism. You get destruction that creates nothing. Pure negation. And that's where we see the collapse of meaning. If you just smash the phone and don't change your life, you're just a guy with a broken phone.
This brings us to a twist that I found genuinely unsettling. Because up until now, we've been talking like we're victims of this system. Society does this to us. Civilization represses us. But the theory flips the table on that, doesn't it?
Yes. The twist is that civilization isn't a cage we're trapped in. We are the architects.
We're doing it to ourselves.
Voluntarily. The most haunting insight here is that we repress our instincts because we are terrified of freedom. We're terrified of the responsibility that comes with truly unleashing our will.
Why would we be terrified of freedom? That's what everyone says they want.
People say they want freedom, but they want safety. Real freedom involves total responsibility. If you're truly free, you have no one to blame but yourself. So we make a bargain. We choose the cage because the cage is safe. We choose a neurosis because it's predictable.
So if we're the architects and we're constantly repressing ourselves to stay safe, what are the actual options? There seem to be two paths of destruction, neither of which sound particularly easy.
No, there's no easy path here. This isn't a self-help book where everything is fixed in 3 steps. The first path is the rebel, the artist or the mystic,
The one who destroys the cage.
the person who decides to destroy the superego. They dismantle the old order inside themselves to build a new self. They refuse to internalize the external authority.
That sounds heroic, the way we usually frame movies. The maverick.
It sounds heroic, but in practice, it risks madness. It risks isolation. When you tear up the script society handed you, you're writing on a blank page. And that's terrifying. You become unintelligible to the people around you.
And the second path.
The conformist. This is the path most of us take. The conformist destroys their own desire to preserve the social order. They sacrifice the self for the world.
So either way, something gets destroyed. Either you destroy the fake version of yourself to be real, or you destroy your real self to fit in.
Exactly. Both are forms of destruction. It's just a matter of what you're aiming the weapon at. And this leads to a direct challenge for the listener.
Yeah, let's ask these questions, because when I considered them, they hit me hard.
Audit your own life. Ask yourself, when you curate your life online, when you pick that perfect filter, are you expressing yourself? Or are you erasing yourself to be loved?
Oof, that cuts deep.
When you sit in a meeting and see something wrong, a flaw in the plan, an ethical breach, but you stay silent, are you being professional? Or are you feeding power with your complicity?
That is the verdict, isn't it? We're not innocent bystanders. We are co-authors of our own repression.
We are. Civilization is not just what happens to us, it's what we do to ourselves to avoid facing what we really are. We police ourselves so the state doesn't have to.
So I have to ask, is there a third way? Because rebel and go crazy or conform and die inside are not great options. I'm hoping you have something else. There's a concept of witnessing, isn't there?
This is the glimmer of hope, but it requires a lot of mental discipline. It's not about smashing the system immediately, that's just more acting out. It's about creation through witnessing.
What does that look like practically for the person listening on their commute right now?
It means recognizing the aggression without acting on it, but also without hiding it from yourself. It means feeling the forbidden desire without shame.
So not pushing it down, but not letting it drive the car either.
Right. You look at that urge to destroy, that moment you want to smash the phone, and you say, I see you. You're part of me. You stop pretending you're just a nice person. You acknowledge the chaos. Because when you stop fighting it, you stop being controlled by it.
It sounds like mindfulness, but with a lot more teeth.
It is philosophical mindfulness. It's holding the tension between the need for chaos and the need for order.
Right.
And that tension, that's where real life happens. That's where the energy is.
It's interesting. If you numb the destruction, you numb the creativity too. You flatten the whole curve.
Precisely. You cannot have one without the other. To be fully alive is to be capable of destruction, but choosing creation.
This has been intense. I feel like I need to go sit in a quiet room and stare at a wall for a bit. It's a lot to process.
It is. It shakes the foundations a bit.
But before we go, we always like to leave the listener with something to chew on. A final provocation.
There's a question that I think vibrates. It asks us to look at the sacrifices we make every day.
What's the question?
If civilization is built on what you've sacrificed of yourself,
Yeah.
what would happen if you stopped sacrificing? Not tomorrow, not in some grand revolution, but in the next choice you make, the next silence you keep. What would you destroy to finally begin?
That's a dangerous question.
The best ones always are.
We'll see you in the next deep dive. Take care of yourselves. And maybe, just maybe, let a little bit of that chaos in.
Just a little.